This is Caitlin Jordan here with Catherine Tipper for our first episode of Planarchy of the year of 2026. Our guest today is Lia Majid, an entrepreneur, seasoned business operator, and after a career as a junior executive in engineering at a manufacturing company, Lia took the entrepreneurial plunge, raising capital to acquire Acorn Legal Solutions in 2017, where she served as CEO until successfully exiting in 2023. As a first-generation Pakistani American and daughter of immigrants who built their own medical practice from the ground up, Lia brings a unique perspective on building, operating, and transitioning businesses. She is a Kellogg MBA grad, a Chicago resident since 2012, and now on the hunt for her next acquisition. And we are so excited to have our friend here, Lia.
Thrilled to be here with two people who I am great friends with.
Yes.
So very excited.
This will be a great conversation.
Yeah, we're really excited. We're going to start off the same way with you that we start off with everybody, which is, what were you doing 15 years ago?
I was working at my first job out of college in R&D strategy consulting. I had big dreams of moving to the city and pursuing a big professional career, but I graduated in 2008 and there were no jobs to be had. And so I was happy for my job at a small consulting firm in Cleveland.
As a 2009 graduate, I really appreciate that reality of the market.
Yeah.
Yep, the economy you graduated.
Yeah, it's very important. And when you were that age, just kind of getting out of school, what did you think you'd be doing in 2025? Did you even think about 2025?
I did. I had this big career path. I was like a go-getter. I was like talking to my mentors about how I was going to get a fancy MBA and go to a real consulting firm, like one of those big name brand ones, travel the world, maybe be like a corporate executive. Like I wanted to be somebody highfalutin, but I really saw it in a traditional sort of structure.
Well, that's how success was framed.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's, get the big degree, have the big career. And that was,
Yeah.
When I was growing up, you were supposed to be a doctor. You did the thing that you're supposed to do in business. So on to lightning round. So tell us a time in your professional life when you felt like the odd person out in the room.
This is a funny answer because I studied math and engineering, which there are not a lot of women in. And then I worked in like engineering and R&D strategy, which there are not a lot of women in. And then I went to business school, which there are more women in, but still significantly more men. And then I did entrepreneurship and private equity, which is much more not women, right? Sort of living in that world. And so I got super comfortable in a sea of white men, usually older, where I was the young brown girl.
Yep.
And then with my last business, I went to this conference where like these women attorneys were getting together and talking about how to conquer the world. And I walked in the room and I'm like, that's a lot of chicks in the room. Like, I don't know where I fit in. Like I used to my whole identity being I'm the woman and now I got to be something different. And it took me back for a second. Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I've heard you say that when we've walked into bars before.
Too many attorneys?
Actually, yes. I can remember one time. We were like, there's a lot of lawyers in this bar.
So what song would you use as your personal theme song when you walk into a room?
You know what my hype song is Britney's Work Bitch. Because it starts off with, you want a Maserati, you want a hot body, you got to work, bitch. And I do want those.
What color Maserati?
Red.
I would expect
because if you're going to have a Maserati, you have to get the red one. If you're going to go blue, that's your second Maserati.
Yeah.
So I agree. Okay.
Yeah.
If you had to teach a master class, no, I want to just say something. I appreciate that Brittany says you have to work hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Because she has this look of kind of like, nope, you got to work, girl. Yeah. So if you had to teach a master class on something you're passionate about, not work related, what would the title be?
I don't have many hobbies. Sometimes I feel like my hobby is having hobbies because I just like get a new one and do it for a couple months, then get bored with it and move on to the next one. So I am humble enough to realize I probably shouldn't be teaching many things. I don't have the expertise.
Okay.
I love cooking though. That's been sort of a lifelong love of mine. So maybe something in that direction.
I read something beautiful about cooking recently you're taking ingredients from the earth and you're cutting them up and you're putting them together, and it is a much more integrated hobby than just making something to eat. So
Yeah, I mean, I know you garden too, so like that sort of connection, that tangible being present creation is really grounding.
Yeah, so I think it's a great hobby.
We're going to transition a little bit to talk more about some of your experiences. So, as a woman of color in the world of business acquisitions, and these are spaces that have historically not been very diverse, what unique challenges have you faced and how have you navigated them?
So this is a really interesting question because the biggest challenge I actually faced being a woman of color in that environment was constantly being asked what the experience was like being a woman of color or being a woman at all. I mean, there weren't a lot of women, and so I wasn't sure whether that meant that I wasn't going to be successful. Like, I wasn't sure if there was a reason women didn't do this. And then I would get in these rooms with a lot of well-intentioned men, and they would have conversations like, why aren't more women searching? Is it that sellers are biased? Is it that women are risk averse? Is it that they want to have children and they can't, take the time out of their schedule to pursue an entrepreneurial career? And it just kept reinforcing this idea in my head that you're not going to be successful. And like in search and entrepreneurship, the most important thing you need is to believe that you're going to be successful because you have to keep showing up every day and trying. So anything that undermines that is hard. So that was like one thing that I struggled with. Another thing is when I would have a bad meeting, there was a feedback gap. So people would not say, well, maybe you didn't prepare for that meeting adequately. They would say, do you think it was because you were a woman? Okay. And so I wouldn't get like the coaching I need to be more successful because we sort of had this easy crutch reason that wasn't my fault and wasn't under my control.
Interesting.
And so those were like a couple, as I reflect on the experience, those were a couple things that I think made it more challenging that didn't need to.
So you weren't getting the same coaching that men would have gotten in your position, you think?
Because
they were just focused on what the barriers were to you being a woman trying to do this when the success rate is so small comparatively to men.
Yeah.
How I'm taking this is it's not framing that you're a woman. It's just that became almost an obstacle in the room just because people were trying to be gentle about it and you didn't, or make you representative for something. Like you could roll with these people. You just wanted to roll with them.
Yeah. I think people took it easy on me and that wasn't doing me a favor.
Right.
I needed the same tough love everybody else needed to be successful.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about, not politically, but Margaret Thatcher sitting in a room with a bunch of guys and nobody was calling her out for being a woman, right? Like you wouldn't cross her for that. And so sometimes people are allowed that. And then some people, you become the spokesman for answering all these other questions when you want to hear it.
You
like
have to
everybody else.
Margaret Thatcher, what was it like 10 years before she was prime minister in that room? What was it like when she was like the person that was kind of on the outside? I wonder if she's got the same kind of experiences,
Yeah, but I think she powered through. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not saying you should always have to power, but as we get into this, it's funny that like some of the opportunities that I had, like walking to the office and telling Christopher, I need to be the CFO.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, there's no reason you have to be. I mean, you can do all these other, no, when I walk into the room, I need to be a CFO. And then when I say I want to be a CFO, you hope that there's a crowning ceremony, right? Somebody puts a crown on your head and says, here you are, and now we respect you all and everything else. And it's like, oh no, I have to actually learn this and I have to do it and I have to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a certain amount, I can't always tell if it's gendered or not, but it's when you're reaching for bigger things, if you're waiting for the applause line or the people to take you through, it isn't necessarily going to be there. You have to figure some things out. And it happens. And the one thing is you're doing entrepreneurial stuff and that's just different in general,
mm-hmm.
And it's like, can I say still at this point, I still have neighbors and parents and family who have zero clue what this is, what I'm doing and still think that I'm working in a big corporation. The bias is really weird. The bias is weird and tricky. And I think that you're a good thinker in terms of what really is the bias here.
Right.
So
your Margaret Thatcher analogy is perfect because I felt like as a woman, younger in my career, and I'm getting out of that box now, but I felt like I had two options. Either lean into like, I'm the woman and this is so amazing and make that part of my identity, or completely go the other direction and be like don't even think of me as a woman. I am one of the men and I act, which is, I think, the Margaret Thatcher approach, right?
Right, yeah, right.
Don't even question the fact that I'm a woman.
Right.
As opposed to this more integrated approach, I'm a woman and also I am a professional, and so what? Like, that's a more integrated approach, which I'm leaning more into now.
Right. Yep. Interesting stuff.
Okay. I feel like that leads kind of into our next question. You're now positioning yourself as a buyer who can provide competent, caring continuity, which I love the alliteration, to sellers who might be nervous about private equity or other kinds of buyers, other strategic buyers. How do you think your identity and your experience shapes that pitch to sellers in terms of, what do you think that you can offer that other people can't?
Yeah, so the second round looking for a business, I've actually been in the seat, like I've been in Katherine's seat before. And so that brings like a level of empathy that is huge. And I think that reflects in how I'm targeting business owners, like who I'm looking for and what I'm looking for in a seller and what they want. And so one thing I really focus on is sellers who want legacy. Some folks are happy to sell to the highest bidder and take their money, and that's their retirement fund, and the next owner can do what they want. A lot of business owners feel like the business is their baby. I mean, I'm sure you feel this way, Katherine. Like, it's been blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice.
It's the final child that's not really leaving the house.
That's right. This one stays in your basement forever. So having had that experience helps a lot, and knowing to focus on that helps a lot. And then another really interesting thing when I talk to business owners is there's a huge struggle to sell your business and to retire. Like, what are you going to do with that time? Who are you as a person? Like, your identity becomes so entwined with the business.
Yeah.
And so, like, in a funny way, being a buyer that can talk about having gone through that before and help them visualize that process, I think it helps build trust. And I think it leaves them with a feeling that they can rest easy knowing that they've sold the business to me. And I think for the right sellers, I think that rings true.
Yeah.
So you've navigated major milestones, acquiring a business, running it through COVID, which could not have been easy, successfully exiting, which also I remember when you were doing that, like, it was hard. When you hit those big wins, how do you reward yourself? Do you have like a go-to celebration ritual, or does it kind of depend on what the achievement is? Do you give yourself like a different reward depending upon like what you accomplish?
This is like such a good question, and you are the perfect person to be asking me this, because I feel like you have really pushed me to celebrate these things and like small things like my birthdays and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not something I've been good at. I've always been guilty of moving the milestone, moving the goalpost.
Right.
And so I've never really done much to celebrate. I've sort of written it down and been like, oh, it's not really that successful. Like, on to the next thing. Next time I'll be better, and that'll be worth succeeding. And so it's something I've been trying to get over lately. And I've started journaling every day at the end of the day. Like, what did I accomplish today? And just sort of let myself feel proud of it on a day-to-day basis.
I think that being the kind of person who's looking really complexly at all the things that you need to do to make something successful, it's hard to see it as a clear win, right? Because the things that went well, the things that didn't go well, the things you could have done better. It's hard to let go of that part, not even let go. Honor both the part that got you there, but honor the part that said, I pulled it off. So I can feel that. And somebody once told me, maybe when you start a business, you feel the first wins really well. Like, your first couple of customers, maybe your first $1 million, you feel those, but all the other ones after that, you're just kind of like, it's just a process and I'm trying to make things work better. So it's, yeah.
And it's the funny thing about goals. So in running my business, I was really goal oriented. I think you are too. And the funny thing about goals is if you do them right, you never hit them, but you get further than you would have been without having set them. Mm-hmm. And so you're constantly fighting this feeling of like, I accomplished something, but I didn't quite accomplish what I set out to do. And so I think working on acknowledging that and letting that push you to do better, but also still celebrating your successes, I think that's a really important skill to have.
I think I can only relate to this, not from the business world, but from when I worked in like the nonprofit and campaign world. And I mean, we're working with volunteers, people who aren't paid and you want them to help you reach a goal, sometimes the goal can seem so far down the line and completely unattainable. And I definitely found that it was really important in order to maintain morale and to keep people motivated to keep going, that you have to find the small wins in between the bigger milestones in order to show that there has been progress and that, you know, what you're doing is having impact and making a difference. And it seems like it's exactly the same way in business. Like that goal might seem like it's years down the line, but you have to kind of find the ways to celebrate the in-between parts to show that you're like striving towards it.
Yeah.
Well, I would also say that if you're doing something outside the box and you're being very creative, okay, and you're not following a script that someone else has created, it's not easy to see the milestones because you're discovering, you're being creative. You have an idea where you're going, but you're paying attention and seeing what really lands. And so part of that is almost in yourself understanding and dealing with that self-doubt. And that's what I've been thinking about a lot actually for this year, is just like you go out and you create and you do things and then you're waiting for, you know, is there going to be the loud roar to it? Maybe not, but maybe you're onto something. But the whole act of the more creative you get, the less the plan seems like bullet pointed and easy to see the finish line. So anyway, so your parents built their medical practice from the ground as immigrants. How do you think their generation approached financial security and retirement differently from how you were thinking of it now?
When were 401ks as an instrument established?
1974 is when ERISA started, and it was in the 80s it started to become more popular.
But it probably wasn't like widespread like it is now until the 90s, the 2000s, maybe.
Yeah, the push. What's really funny is it's in the 70s it was kind of discovered, but it wasn't it didn't start to be a push till maybe mid 80s and even beginning of 90s that people started going, oh, companies should really have this.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of, is it big firms versus coming down to smaller firms or even medical practices? Like, should a medical practice have a 401k plan? Why? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know that was considered part of what compensation should be for people in a medical practice. So I would say a doctor would go, hey, I need to go, these are my investments. And that's, I would say your CPA was telling you maybe not to do it. Do you know, because you weren't really pushing down to your staff these things. Because your staff, a lot of times, God, I'm really going far on this. And maybe you tell me what you see. I'm just saying, when you walk into a doctor's office, you see a lot of women who are like, you know, maybe they're part-time, maybe they're not. You know, there's all this, and the whole idea of, I'm going to create a benefit for you to be part of, to keep you long-term and everything else. That is a thinking process that has been very long and coming. I would say it wasn't there for people to think that way. And some of it is all the push to keep on having all sorts of firms have 401k plans, you know, just pushing it all the way down makes it more the idea that, yeah, everybody should have some available retirement thing for them. They really should. And I'd say that's a newer thought. That wasn't true when I was, you know, but to really nail it down, the first 401k plan I was in was Starbucks. And it was in the late 80s, almost 1990. And that's the only reason I knew what it was. Didn't know a lot of other things. Didn't even think what was this other than my company was offering a benefit and it had a match. So I guess I'm going to do this.
Yeah, my parents, like, I don't know if that's an immigrant thing, if that's an entrepreneur thing, or if it was an of the times thing. There was no discussion of 401ks or retirement planning in any sort of concept like that. The concept of retirement was, in my household, was more of a sense of a clean personal balance sheet. We don't want debt. We want to have simple living, right? Like the best retirement is low expenses that gives you the most flexibility.
Right.
And then because my family were entrepreneurs, there was a sense of like, we'll figure it out, right? Like we'll adapt to the market as it comes. And that's how they thought about it. They thought a lot about real estate. Like we want to own our house outright. My dad wanted to own his office outright.
Right.
They thought a lot about having children nearby and like the strength of a family in retirement,
Right.
strength of community and supporting something like that.
Yeah.
That was how they thought about it.
I think that's very appropriate for the time period they were in.
Mm.
For professionals who were doctors,
Yeah.
that's very appropriate.
He could have saved a fortune in like in taxes, right? If he'd had it done.
And that's the and looking at 401k plans in terms of a tax strategy or even cash balance, I don't think those concepts were pushed down as far as they are now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking to acquire businesses where the owners are ready to exit but want to preserve their legacy. How do you bridge the gap between different generational attitudes towards acquisition planning and what it means to let go?
Yeah, seller transition is a huge part of what I do. And we touched on it a little bit earlier, right? This is the seller's baby. And so there's like an element of not wanting to let go. And there's definitely different philosophies around how to run the business. That's always true. They have their way of doing things. You're buying the business because you think you can take it in a different direction.
Right.
And so like, even without the sort of generational consideration, how do you marry 2 points of view is always an open question.
Oh.
I, with my first acquisition, made a ton of mistakes by thinking, oh, like these, they weren't old geezers. They were very intelligent guys and they were relatively young. But for the purposes of the story, these old farts don't know anything about technology. I'm going to upgrade the software, right? And I did that and just caused chaos. Like my employees were annoyed because they had a different system to keep track of their time. They didn't know how to do it. My accounting team didn't know how to invoice it. And so like a healthy respect for what they've done is I think a big part of the success. One thing I think that I've benefited from working with folks that are a generation ahead of me is a real orientation towards in-person conversations, phone calls, real relationship building. Like I think that is a strength of the generation before that my age perhaps doesn't have. And it really makes a difference in small business. It's a big reason they were successful. So honoring that is important.
That's interesting.
I can totally relate to the experience of being at the top of something and saying, you know what, we really need to change all of this, and then having everybody that has to deal with it get really mad at you.
Change
implementing.
So hard.
It is hard.
It's so hard.
It is hard.
Which leads us to AI and technology. That walks us straight into
Right.
that topic. So technology has completely changed how small businesses operate. Possibly. Now, how are you thinking about AI and digital transformation as you evaluate potential acquisitions? And what role did technology play in scaling Acorn during your time as a CEO?
So technology I guess I'll go chronologically. Technology with Acorn was a huge factor. And Acorn was a technology reseller, and we did consulting around technology. And so it was a core part of our business. So thinking about what emerging technologies are coming down the pipe and when to adopt them and how to market them was a huge part of the problem. And the easy thing to do is to fall in love with the technology, which many people are doing with AI. Mm-hmm. Fall in love with the technology too early before it's actually ready to create value, right? And then you have a bad experience with it, and then that technology has the stink forever associated with it, even 5 years down the line when it's actually at this point going to be a productive tool.
Right.
And so like navigating that pipeline of technology at Acorn was a real part of the process. I got involved with AI before ChatGPT was out because in the legal industry, we were dealing with unstructured communications.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So I was named an AI visionary.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By Relativity.
Did you get a t-shirt so you can...
I
was there first.
I was there second.
Okay. Okay.
I should have gotten that.
Okay.
So that's sort of the Acorn piece. With evaluating acquisitions, it's an interesting thing because I want a company that is sophisticated enough in technology where I'm not going to buy it and be totally underwater, have to face a bunch of investments and make a bunch of changes just to get it kind of functional.
Yeah.
But I don't want to buy a business that's super sophisticated with technology just as a buyer, because I want there to be something for me to improve after I buy the business. Right? I don't want to pay a premium for something great. I want to be paid to make something good into something great.
Right.
That's just sort of how I am investing in them. And when I think about like investing in technology, after I buy the business, sort of coming back to that earlier story, I think it's a slow process. I think you really need to understand your customers in your business and why it does things the way they do so that you can manage that change management process. So I don't go in with a specific plan of I want to make these changes. I go in with some notes. This is something to look into and something to pay attention to. And I think about introducing new technology into the operations maybe 2 or 3 years after I acquire as sort of the right time frame.
Right. I think it's a small market of the people who are going, oh, new technology, this is amazing. People want that change managed. Okay.
So you went from being a junior executive to raising capital and acquiring your own business. What made you take that leap? I think you talked about this a little bit, but if you could talk more specifically about what made you take that leap and also what surprised you most about going from employee to owner operated.
Yeah. So that was such a fun period in my life. So my first job, I was fired for insubordination. It was a small business. I was talking back to the owner.
Wow.
I can relate.
Rightfully so. Mark McCluskey, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I was a jerk. I'm old enough now that I can say it. Dealt with enough insubordinate my employees that I see the error of my ways.
Talking like it was a while ago, yeah.
So it was a long time ago. I was a different person then.
Yeah.
And then I went and worked in corporate America, like a huge, at the time they were a $13 billion revenue company. And I was thinking to myself, like, I feel like I've made it, but I'm missing something. Like I miss rolling up my sleeves. I miss problem solving. I miss this feeling of knowing something intimately inside and out and being able to beat other people just because I'm better, just because I know something better. And so that made me realize I wanted to get back into small business. I didn't have an idea to start a business. I didn't have money to buy one. And so I didn't know what to do until I came across the search fund model. And so that to me felt like a safe bet, because the other concern about getting into small business was this feeling of like, I've done all this work to get my engineering degree and, get all this stuff on my resume, and I'm going to go to this no-name business and do this no-name job. And like, how am I going to be secure that if it doesn't work out, I'll be able to get a job somewhere else?
Is there one counter to that narrative that you feel like was ingrained in you in terms of like where you went to school and kind of all the things you were told to do to be successful?
Yes. And like, I imagined, I'm 26 or whatever I was then, and I try to get into small business and it doesn't work out. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be so old at 31 applying to be a marketing manager. And they're going to be like, well, you have no relevant qualifications. It was a real fear of mine.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And so the search fund thing felt okay on that front because it was something that Stanford had published articles on, and billionaires invest in you. And so like, it felt like a story I could still spin. And so that helped me make the plunge. And then as soon as I like started looking for a business, I remember the first time I used the word entrepreneur to describe myself.
Yeah.
And I felt lighter. Like I stood up straighter. I just felt like I was finally presenting my authentic self to the world. And all of these things that people had always told me were liabilities about my personality. You're too direct, you're too aggressive, you have too much of a bias for action, dim your light, and like think of the other people in the room, right? All of these things that I had been viewed as things I needed to manage about myself was really struggling with became strengths.
All those qualities, if you use those to describe a man, would be seen as strengths too.
Yeah,
but I do really want to put out there, though, there is a fundamental bias between having a business and working for a business. And there is some gendered stuff. Some guys really want to work in places where they play it safe. They don't have to say things. They don't have to raise their hand. They don't have to. I get why there's almost more freedom in it if you can find your market.
Yeah.
That's what there's more freedom if you can find the market that fits to your strengths, which is, I believe, what you did.
I think that's the goal. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to seek employment. I think the trick is to figure out what your strengths are and put yourself in those environments. Because like exactly in my example, right? The same things that are a strength in entrepreneurship were a liability in corporate America. And that's just the truth of the matter.
Know where the bias is coming. It's coming from a lot of different directions. So you've been open about the emotional roller coaster of selling Acorn Legal Solutions, being responsible to employers, guilty about abandoning the hard work, anxious about how someone else might treat your business. Walk us through the decision and what helped you make peace with it.
Yeah. So I'd always known that I was going to sell Acorn because I had investors. And so was that 5 years? Was that 10 years? That was sort of the time frame. So every time I went into a board meeting, there was always when are we going to sell and what's the ROI on a sale? And is it a hold versus sell was always part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. At some point, I felt like I had taken Acorn as far as I could with the resources I had. So like we could have kept growing slow and steady, but it was sort of on autopilot. And that made me lose interest in the role because it wasn't my business. I had investors, I had a small portion of it. And so like I didn't care about it the way that I would have cared about it if I had owned it entirely. Like I wasn't quite as invested personally in it. And so I felt for my investors and for myself, selling the business was the right move. That part came really clear to me. What I struggled with is it's like an incredibly violent thing to do to your employees to sell the business, right? Mm-hmm. They're like worried about their jobs. They're going to have new bosses, like it's a stressful thing. And it's a weird situation. It's a weird thing because you're doing it without talking to them, right? Like you're deciding for them to cause all this disruption to their life.
Sometimes clients feel that way too, though.
Clients,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they weren't looking for a purchase and sale to happen to the vendor that they were using.
Right.
Suddenly now there's a new face. So you are right to go. There is a certain sense that people are like, I didn't ask for this one. And how do you actually?
And I trusted you and you took advantage of me and did something without my permission. Yeah. I definitely felt that with clients. I felt it more strongly with employees.
Right.
But I felt it with both. And this feeling of like these people had believed in me and now I'm abandoning them. Like that was a part of it too. It took me a long time to get over that. Part of what helped was just going through the process of selling the business because at that point, I could look at the specific buyer and I could see like this company will do a good job for my employees and for my clients. And then I also made peace with the idea that my employees and my clients were really talented. And sometimes a little bit of a shakeup is actually good for everyone.
Right.
And I think what's happened, the PS on that, the postscript on the sale is that most of my employees have ended up way better with either the buyer or with a new company that they went to than they were with me. And most of the clients have ended up way better with their service providers too.
Right. Yep. Yeah. The normal narrative on 401k plans per Google is that, you're locking money in and you can't do anything with your money. But you've been able to save money in your 401k plan and now use it to help you potentially buy a business. So can you walk through the benefits of what this is for you?
Sure. Yeah. When I was looking to buy the business, I didn't want to have investors. I wanted to do it all on my own, but I didn't have enough money in my bank account or like my mutual funds to do that. And so I came across the concept of a Rob's transaction, which is where you can actually take the money in your 401k and use that to either start a business or use that as the equity injection into the purchase of in the acquisition of an existing business. And so that became, at first I was scared, but that actually became very exciting to me because I could use pre-tax money to buy the business, right? And so like that nest egg that I've been building up is something I can use today to help pay myself a salary and give myself employment and build wealth for the future for myself.
Right.
One thing that's really nice about it is like, even with that transaction, when I was first researching it, it felt pretty rigid and limited. But as I've been talking to like you and Christopher, I've understood there's a lot of flexibility around that. Like I can either put the money in like a loan to the business that gets paid back to the 401k, or I can put it in as equity.
Right.
The problem is when I put it in as equity, it goes in, it has to be a C Corp. It has to be a corporation that the money goes into. And so my accountants hate it because you get that double taxation. You pay taxes at the corporate level. And corporation issues dividends. You pay more taxes.
Right. Yeah.
But there's even options there. You can buy out the 401k. You can convert to a Roth IRA. And so like I'm really surprised with how flexible that nest egg is that I was really not counting on being able to access for a long time.
Right.
And it does seem like something that people from different generations would want to potentially pursue, like using that investment piece in different ways than just retirement. And you can think about it as a way to set yourself up for retirement, because like this next business could be the thing that like sets you up for retiring.
That's exactly how I think about the next business. Is it is something interesting to do for work that I enjoy, but I'm not looking to get rich off of it. But I do hope that it funds my retirement at the end of the 20-year process or whatever.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, okay, let's bring it home. So, what's one barrier that kept you from feeling confident about money, and how did you start to break through it?
Money was sort of like funny to me because it felt like I needed at any point in my life to have enough to live the rest of my life, and anything less than that felt like I was frozen in fear.
Right.
And I think that also came from like a salary mindset where you feel like you need to plan everything and anticipate everything and be able to survive it all. What I learned from the entrepreneurial journey is like money is a little more flexible and a little more dynamic than we give it credit for. And so I do need enough money to be realistic. I need enough to have a safety net. But what I'm buying myself with money is time to adapt. Okay. I'm not buying myself safety for the rest of my life, is how I've started thinking about it. And once I built that confidence in my ability to generate income and have a network and have skills and feel like I could be adaptable, that's actually allowed me to be more aggressive and more risky with my investments.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which I think is probably a better place to be.
Okay.
Not super risky, but just a little more.
That's an amazing way to end. So, yeah, so we thank you really for taking your time and talking us through this
and coming here to hang out with us. And do this. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Amazing. So,
my pleasure. This was fun. Like 2 thumbs up. Thanks for having me.
If you have any questions, sales@hunter.benefits.com.
Email me.
Well, and obviously this is on YouTube and it's Spotify.
It's on iTunes.
Yeah.
It is. We're on Instagram. You can find clips of us on Instagram and follow us for updates. We're going to try to be everywhere. If you want us to be somewhere else, tell us.
Yes.
We'll go there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a great day.